Hey, welcome to my message for this week. I hope you guys have had a great week. I know God has really been working in and through me throughout this week. I've been able to reach out to some people, been able to talk to people, and have people feed into me as well. I know I've had a great week. I hope you guys have as well. I hope you guys enjoy the message for today. I think that it's something that's really powerful. I'm going to be talking about our faith and what faith is, what faith does, and what it looks like. And I'm going to be using an example from the Bible to kind of explain that. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you next week. Bye. So what do you put your faith in? A lot of people put their faith in a lot of different things. And now, there are some things that I think you can put your faith in. For example, I have faith in my school that they will teach me and educate me well so that when I leave from college, I'm able to have a good job and I'm able to put myself in a good situation, and that the things that I'm learning here will be able to apply to what I'm doing. I have faith in that. Or, for example, I have faith in the food that I eat, that it will be able to fill me up, that it will be able to nourish my body. I have faith in the air that I breathe, that it will be able to continue to bring life into me, that it will continue to sustain me. I have faith in the water that I drink, that it will continue to replenish my body and clear out all the toxins that are in the body. So there's some things in this life, in this world, that I have faith in. So my big question is, what do you put your faith in? Because there's a big thing where if you put your faith in something, then that is where you get your reward as well. Where you put your faith, your favor will also come from. So you have to be really careful about where you put your faith and then how that looks in your life. So, for example, let's say I put my faith in people, or I put my faith in my boss or my mentor. People are broken, and people do things where we can look at them, and regardless of what your view on sin is, we can look at them and go, they don't morally do the right thing all the time. People will let you down. Most of the things in this world, if you're getting something that is non-tangible, will let you down. So what I mean is, with water, with food, with education, these are all things that you can actively work towards or that you can consume. They're physical things. While education and knowledge might not be a physical thing, it's been proven and it has a process in order for you to gain it. So I have faith that they're using that process correctly. But when you're putting your faith in a person to be an example, the ultimate example to you, or if you're relying on a person to provide wholly for you, people will mess up. And so people will ultimately let you down. So if you put your faith in something that will ultimately let you down, you're going down the dangerous path. So where you put your faith is where you find your favor. So I want to really challenge and push you guys today, and then try and think critically. Where do you put your faith? So when we get into this a little bit more, people often use the words faith and trust interchangeably, that there would be no difference between the two. I would argue that there's a big difference between the two. So let me go into a little bit. So trust is having confidence in a specific area in my life. So maybe my trust would be in the example of going to school. I put trust in each one of my classes that they would provide, but I have faith in the whole school. Or I put trust in every meal that I eat, but I have faith that food will nourish me. So on and so forth. It goes, trust, have a confidence in a specific area. Faith is a complete trust, a complete confidence in something. It is something where you have this ultimate laying out of what you believe, this ultimate trust of you are completely putting yourself in that other person or that other place's hands. So if you completely devote yourself, completely and wholly devote yourself to something in this world, it is dangerous. It's dangerous because the world is ran by a whole lot of broken people just like you and me. And broken people will ultimately let you down. So, while I might have faith in the education that I'm getting, I know that ultimately my faith comes from God. And that I have ultimate faith in God. Now, I believe that God is working in my school, but God is not the one teaching me in front of the classroom. So I have to trust the system that's put in place. So I want to really challenge you guys today. What are you trusting in? What are you having faith in? What are the areas in your life where you would trust that before you would trust God? And now, it might seem like a weird question, because especially if you're watching this and you've been a Christian for a while, then you might say, well, I let God control all areas. But even I struggle with and do not let God control all areas of my life. That's something that I'm still working on. That's something that I'm still working towards, is having a complete faith, a complete trust in God. And it's a lot harder than it seems. And for some people, it could be their finances. For some people, it could be their relationships. For some people, it could be their job. For some people, it could be their reputation. For some people, it could be even the situations that you find yourself in, your decision making. You might place your decision making above your faith and your trust in God, right? Because the trust can be for a specific decision, but maybe you can trust God in specific decisions, but how do you move from specific trust in order to get to a complete faith? So, we are going to look at a story today that helps to display, well, okay, so if we're at trust and our goal is faith, how do we get from trust to faith? What are the consequences if we don't move from trust to faith? Because there are consequences for not moving forward with it. So, just throughout today, I want you guys to really be thinking about what are some areas where you need to move from trusting God to having faith in God. Where are those areas? That complete trust. Maybe some of you guys need to put your complete trust in God's area and God's willingness to provide for you. Might not make you rich, but He will provide for you. He will give you what you need and what your family needs in order to live if you put that in His hands. Now, that's not to say that you won't have to do any work for it, but God will make sure that things line up so that you can continue to spread His word and His gospel. So, if you guys could flip with me, we're going to be in Daniel again, like last week, but this week we're going to be in Daniel 3. Now, Daniel 3 is a pretty common story, but I want to approach it from a little different of a perspective. So, Daniel 3, I'm going to give some context leading up to where I'm going to start. And so, Daniel 3, there's 3 guys named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So, these 3 men are the rulers over the province of Babylon. And the king, Nebuchadnezzar, has made a 90-foot statue. It's 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. And he's commanded all of his people to gather and bow down to the statue and to worship the statue. And the punishment for not doing so is getting thrown into a furnace, into a fiery furnace. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they all go and do not bow down. So they are brought before the king Nebuchadnezzar. And so they go and they confront Nebuchadnezzar and say, I will never bow down to your idol. I will never bow down to anything that is not Christ. And so then he got really mad. And now when I say he, it's Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar got really mad. So what he did is he ordered the furnace to be put to 7 times hotter. And the flames are 7 times bigger than what they usually are. It was so hot that when Nebuchadnezzar, he took some of the strongest men to tie the 3 men up. And so when they were tied up, the men who threw them into the fire died because of how close they had to get to the fire. That's how strong this was. So while they were being thrown into the fire, the men who were throwing them in had already died by the time that they were able to throw them into the fire. It's insane. So I'm going to pick up in verse 24. Verse 24 says, Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, Did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, True, O king. So let's look at that for a second. So when you looked at this, right, Nebuchadnezzar hopped up. There was something I think it's really funny. So it will take people forever to judge you as a person and to see who you are as a person, but it will only take a split second once you've been thrown in that place where they thought that they were going to do you harm. Oh man, I'm getting ahead of myself. But it only takes that split second in order for them to realize what God can do in you and through you. It takes a split second. He was astonished and rose up. And then people will question their situation. Did you not throw 3 people into the fire? Now, I'm going to read one more verse and then stay on that for a second. He answered and said, But I see 4 men unbound walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. The appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. So we're going to hold on verse 25 for a second. So they were thrown in with 3 men. And so when they did this with their 3 men, they were thrown in, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so they were thrown in, tied up, weren't able to move around, nothing. And so when they got thrown into the flames, the king Nebuchadnezzar exclaims out, Did I not put 3 people? Like, I'm pretty sure that I only put 3 people in the furnace. And then his counselors are like, yes, you did. You only put 3. He's just like, why do I see a 4th? So you can approach this from a few different ways. A lot of people will say, even in the flames, even in the fire, God is with you. And I agree. That's a great way to look at it. And if that helps you, then it helps you. God will always be with you in the flame. But I want to approach it from a different way. God not only will be with you, but he'll protect you from it. These men, they were walking around unharmed. These men, they were walking around, and now the things that the people had done to them in order to keep them binded up, in order to keep them where they were, in order to keep them from not moving forward, the things where they tied them up, they had the strongest men tie them up. They had the strongest warriors and whatever they were, the strongest men around King Nebuchadnezzar, tied them up. They were not able to move. They were not able to do anything. they were being held back from the punishment of other people. So when they got thrown into the flames, they didn't get hurt, but they were unbound. God will take the things that people use to hold you back, and when you're in the flames, he's able to burn that off. Now, I want to flip to Numbers 31 real quick. Just read one verse. We're going to hold, this is in that same theme of what I was talking about. Okay, Numbers 31 verse 23. It says, everything that can stand the fire, you shall pass through the fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall also be purified with the water for impurity, and whatever cannot stand the fire, you shall pass through the water. So let me just tell you guys today, if you find yourself in the flames, it's because you can stand the flames. God has put that trust, has put that power, put that strength in you in order for you to be able to make it through the flames. God has put what you need in you in order to get done the things that he needs you to get done. God will put you through the flames at some point and will let people punish you by throwing you into the flames. But guess what? He'll be there with you, and he will also provide what you need. He will break free those barriers, because what the fire does is it takes the things that are not necessary, it takes the things that are not needed, and it burns them off of you. You are not held back by anything in this world. But you will be unharmed. God will not let the things that are binding you continue to keep hold on you when you go through the flames. And now this process in Numbers 31 that I was talking about, here Moses is talking about specifically metals and gold, right? Gold, silver. And so the metals, the things that can stand the fire, will go through the fire. And now the only reason why they put them through the fire is to purify the gold and the silver. It makes them more valuable. It makes them more precious than they were before. But that process can only happen by going through the flames. So some of you guys, when you're facing things in your life, when you look at your situation around you and go, how can God be working? How can God be with me in this situation when I don't even see him? I don't feel him. I just see flames all around me. There's heat. The thing is 7 times hotter than what it normally is. It seems like people are just out to get me. But God will allow you to stay in the flames, because the longer you're in the flames, the longer you will be purified. The longer you will be able to use God's provision, God's word, God's anointing over your life. And the longer you stay in the flames and the more times you're thrown into the flames, God is able to work through it. God is able to work through that situation, no matter what it seems like people around you are trying to put on you. God will always be able to work through it. So when people throw you into that bad job, when people throw you into that bad school, when people throw you into that bad relationship, when people throw you into the bad church, God might be using that situation in order for you to bring light to it. Now, if you're in an abusive relationship, if you're in a bad church where they are not speaking the gospel, it's more dangerous to stay in than it is out. This does not apply in all situations. Okay? I'm not at all encouraging people to stay in a relationship and try and go through the flames by thinking that the flames are them abusing you, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally. Abuse is not from God. Here I'm talking about flames that are from God, because God will allow you to go through some situations in your life in order to purify you. But abuse is not one of those. If you are in a situation like that, you need to get out. You need to run away, and you need to seek guidance. You need to seek counseling from other people. God he can carry you through that situation, but you need to do yourself a favor and get out of the situation. It's not for you. It's not for anybody. So, let me move one verse forward. Then Nebuchadnezzar came to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High, come out and come here. Then they came out from the fire. Now, there's a few things I want to bring up here. So first of all, this fire, right? When people throw you into the fire, they expect it to harm you. When people throw you into the fire, they expect it to set you back from where you are. But I want to share something with you real quick. If you flip to Hebrews 12, verse 29, it says, God is an all-consuming fire. God is an all-consuming fire. God is the situation that you're being thrown into. God has the power and has the strength to override the situation that you find yourself in order to use it for His glory. God will be able to overwrite the flames that surround you, the flames that seem to make up your whole entire life, and God will take these flames and use it for His good. Where you put your faith is where you put and where you get your favor. If they would have put their faith in Nebuchadnezzar, then they wouldn't have been in this situation. They wouldn't have been thrown into the flames. But that also means that they would not be with God. If you're putting yourself in a position of having faith in God, you have to be ready for the flames. But there's beauty that comes through you being in the flames, and we'll get to that a little bit later. So by being in the flames and by making room, because if you don't make room for God to be with you in the flames, then the fourth person won't be able to show up. That's where the gap comes from this week. When you are thrown into the flames, because regardless if you are a follower of Christ or if you're not a follower of Christ, you will be thrown in the flames. I'm just saying that when you become a follower of Christ, God is able to keep you unharmed and not kill you in those flames. Because God is a flame Himself, so He knows how to handle fire. So, God will keep you protected in the place where you are. Nobody can touch you there. The thing that surrounded you, as bad as it might seem, the longer you stay in there, the longer you get purified. So sometimes we can get comfortable in our punishment. But being comfortable in your punishment is never what God intended for you to do. God wants you to be able to work for His glory, wants to be able to work for His praise. So here, when Nebuchadnezzar calls them out, they're having to step out of their comfort. Now you might be saying, well, how do they have comfort in the flames? Well, they hadn't been touched by the flames. They hadn't have been affected at all. The things that they didn't need, they had took back. But since they had generated that gap in their faith in order for God to be with them in the flames and to know that God was around them and that God was bigger than the situation that they were in, then they knew that God was able to handle the flames that they were put into. Now, since they generated that gap in order for God to work, they were protected. The flames were 7 times hotter than normal. If you look back at that verse, it says when Nebuchadnezzar got as close to the flames as he could. As close. It means he didn't walk up right next to the furnace. He didn't walk up next to the place of their punishment. Because often we can get stuck in this punishment. Because we can hide from other people. Because other people, if they were to walk into that situation, they wouldn't be able to survive. They wouldn't be able to withstand the flames. Now, it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about last week, where at the very end, when they were being lowered down, when the people who were against Daniel were being lowered down into the lion's den, they didn't even make it to the ground before they were devoured by the thing that they put you into. Now, and this is the same thing here. If Nebuchadnezzar would have walked into the flames, since he didn't have his faith in the right place, and he wasn't able to get his favor from the right place, he wouldn't have been able to walk through the flames to get to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Some of us get comfortable in the flames because we're untouchable by other people. Some of us, we like to hide in our flames. We like to hide in the place where we were put in order for us to not have to be reached, in order for us to not have to do anything with other people. Some of us find it more comforting to keep people at a distance in a tough situation than it is for us to be close in an easy situation. And I know throughout my life, I'm able to see this, where when I face hard times in my life, in the past, I've gotten more distant. And in the things where I felt like where I'm in the flames, I've just been there, just fire around me, not knowing where to put my faith, not knowing where to put my trust. And in this, like I've gotten burned. Because if you don't go into the fire with a complete faith, then some areas of your life will get burned. Now, we have to look at this metaphorically, because we are not going to literally be thrown into a fiery pit like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were. Like, that's the example. But then how do we apply that example? How do we enter into the flames that people have seemingly thrown on us, and then walk around in the midst of that unharmed, in allowing God to protect you and allowing God to guide you through that situation? It's by having a complete faith. Because God can only protect what you allow him to protect. God will not be able to protect your finances if you aren't using your finances in a godly manner. God won't be able to protect your job if you're putting your job before God. God won't be able to protect your relationships if you're allowing your relationships to become an idol before God. And now an idol just means putting anything before God. Some people put money before God. Some people put their job before God. Some people put their relationships before God. Whatever that is, when you don't have complete faith, your decision-making, your knowledge is being put in front of God. In any of those situations in your life, God is not able to work through them because you won't allow him to have access to them. Okay? God won't be able to work through what you don't give him access to. So, in this, when Nebuchadnezzar calls Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego out of the flames, some of us like to stay in the flames because God is able to work and show his glory best and is able to keep us untouched from the world. But some of us, and now this is where the real power comes in, you need to step out. You need to step out from being surrounded by God in all situations where nobody can touch you, where nobody can get to you. You need to allow yourself to be exposed, because your exposure is somebody else's empowerment. Your exposure is what allows other people to look at their situation and be able to do something with it. Your exposure is allowing people to learn from what you have done, from allowing other people to look and say, he's gone through the flames and he was tied up and wasn't able to move anywhere, but when he made a gap for God to work, he was able to get through them. Sometimes you need to step out. Sometimes that's all that God is calling you to do. Now, people, when they throw you in the flames, and then when they see that they aren't hurting you, they'll often be confused and want to call you out of the flames in order for you to be able to explain why you're not being hurt. And sometimes that's all you have to do. Sometimes you just have to step out. Step out in faith. The amount of faith that it took to step in is the amount of faith that it takes to step out. Some of us think that the real faith comes when you're being thrown into the flames. But I think that the real faith comes is when you go out of the flames. Because if you go into the flames knowing Hebrews 12:29 that God is an all-consuming fire, and since he is fire, he knows how to handle fire, and he'll be able to protect you in it. Some of us enjoy being able to purify ourselves. Some of us enjoy the tough situations. And we like to be in there because it's able to separate us from the people around us. But for some of you, the real test of the faith is to step out. That's what I would encourage some of you guys to do today, is step out. Where is God calling you to step out? In using and allowing your exposure to empower or encourage somebody else. That's the big question. Now, we're going to read one more verse. Verse 27. And the stirrups, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair on their head was clean. It was not singed. Their cloaks were not harmed. And no smell of fire had come upon them. Now, I want to skip forward real quick, and then I'm going to come back to verse 27. Now, when they had come out of the fire, and they had come out of the situation that they were in, Nebuchadnezzar praises the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And he is able, verse 29, therefore I make a decree, any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn from limb to limb, and their houses laid in ruins. There is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. And then Nebuchadnezzar promoted them to a higher standing. Now, promoting people, man. Now, Nebuchadnezzar promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego for going through his punishment. Sometimes your punishment is your provision. Sometimes your punishment is the power that you need so that God can work through that situation in order for him to glorify himself. Now he will make, maybe he will come through like he did in this situation and make the king, make the person who's trying to control you completely give his whole entire kingdom, give his whole entire surrounding to what you dedicate your life to. Might not be the case, but either way, God will be able to glorify and work through the situation that you find yourself in, because you have not only stepped in, but you stepped out of the situation. Now it's only when you step out that people can see that your hair wasn't singed and that your clothes weren't burnt and that you didn't even smell of flames. And then they can see the power and the glory of God. And then they will be able to also learn about your faith, learn about your trust in God, and will be able to take one step closer to knowing about who God is, about knowing who Christ is. And for some of you guys, you just need to allow yourself to be exposed so that God can use his glory and his power through you in order to reach other people. Now, that was where I wanted to go. Sometimes your punishment is your provision. But the last thing that I want to talk about, how was it that they were able to go into the flames and God was able to burn off the physical, right? God was able to burn off the ropes that had torn, or that God allowed them to be torn from. God broke them free from the physical binding of the ropes. But how is it that God was able to tear the physical binding and burn the physical binding without burning the physical clothes, without even allowing them to physically smell like smoke, without allowing them to have their hair singed, the physical hair on the outside of the body. And it's because of this. God can only protect what is in the frame. Some of us walk around, and now we can use this frame. Perfect. This frame of view. Because there's this certain wall, there's a certain cutout that I have in my room that I've dedicated for me to use as where I preach from and where I communicate with you guys, but you can only see what I want you to see. And for some of us, that's how we treat God. Now, regardless of whether or not you show God everything, God sees everything. You might only allow him to see a room of the house, or a room, right, a space, but he can see it all. But he can't do anything with the things that you are hiding from God. So God can only be faithful, or you can only be faithful and allow God to work in that faith with the things that you put in the frame. Now, I'm going to use this as a sermon illustration. My room is not normally this messy. But some of us have a clean frame behind us. But then when we look over at our desk and we look over at the things that are around us, we see that the messiness is on the floor, that the bed isn't made, and we look over here and we have stuff laid out. Now, once again, my room doesn't usually get this messy because I try and keep it fairly clean, but some of us, this is how we're living life. And for some of us, this is how we're treating God. We're thinking that because we only see and we only allow God to see what we want him to see, that he'll be able to work through it. But I want to share something with you guys today. The dirt in your life is where God needs to work the most. The places where you find dirt all around you, whether it be the mess on the desk, whether it be the dirt on the floor, God is able to work through them. And when you expose your surroundings to God, God is able to start to fix them. God is able, if you put your trust and your faith in if you put every specific trust in God, in giving you a complete faith in God, God is able to work through that situation. And God is able to do what he can do, but only when you let him. So some of you guys, you need to put your faith in Christ today. You need to put your complete and total faith in God today. You need to stop hiding the messiness in your life and expose it to God and allow God to start to use it. So if that's you, I want to pray with you right now. And bow your head with me. The Bible says if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, then you will be saved. It doesn't take anything special. It doesn't take even a special prayer. But I'm going to lead you guys in prayer for those who are saying it for the first time and don't know what to say. You can pray with me. God, I know that I've not put my complete faith in you. God, I know that I'm only trusting you in areas of my life, or I might not be trusting you at all. But God, I want to. God, I want to trust. And God, I want to work so that I will eventually have complete faith in your ability to provide and your ability to prevail. And God, I know that the only way that I can do this is by putting my faith in Jesus Christ, who came down, who bore all my messiness, and was able to go through the flames in order that he would be risen from the dead, had defeated death, defeated my messiness, defeated my sin, defeated my shame, in order for God's glory, his glory, to shine through. And God, I give myself to you today. If you guys just prayed that, I would love to be able to hear from you. I'd love to be able to get to know you and help you take next steps. My email is pastormitchs@gmail.com. And I would love to be able to just take these steps with you and walk through your life in Christ. So I hope you guys had a good week this week. I hope that the example of me doing the frame, what's in the frame, what's out of the frame, was effective. I don't usually let my room get quite that bad before I clean it, but I think it was very important because a lot of us will take the cleanliness and we'll show it to other people, but then we'll also show that cleanliness to God. And it's not until we put that complete faith in allowing God to see our mess that He's truly able to work. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you back next week.